Kakadosh Boker Or, Masechet Kiddushin Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. Today's Daf 37. We're just going to start though on the Mishnah on the bottom of Lamed Vav Amud Bet. 36b, the Mishnah. So says the Mishnah, Kol mitzvah shehi tluya ba'aretz, ena noheget ela ba'aretz. Ve'she'ena tluya ba'aretz, noheget ben ba'aretz ve'mechutz haaretz. So any mitzvah which is dependent upon Eretz Yisrael is only going to be in Eretz Yisrael. And any mitzvah which is not tluya ba'aretz, so therefore it's going to be whether it's in Eretz Yisrael or whether it's going to be in chutz la'aretz. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. Except for chutz min ha'orla, except for orla and kilayim. Because orla and kilayim, right, he comes and he says, orla and kilayim, right, he comes and he says, even though they're not tluyot, even though they are tluyot ba'aretz, it's also going to be in chutz haaretz. Rabbi Eliezer says, afa chadash, even chadash. What does it mean chadash? Chadash also is going to be also in chutz haaretz. So therefore, obviously, you're going to have here the different machlokot. We know what chadash is, right? He comes and he says, right, anything which is going to be chadash, we know the concept of chadash and yashan. It's actually starting right now as well. So therefore, the Gemara is actually going to explain it, and then that's how we're going to get into the dinim of chadash nowadays in chutz haaretz. Okay, so let's start. Says the Gemara, what does it mean? Umay tluya, umay she'ena tluya. What does it mean in the Mishnah when the Mishnah says that any mitzvah which is tluya ba'aretz or not tluya ba'aretz? What is the pshat of tluya or not tluya? Ilei ma tluya. If you're going to tell me tluya, right, which is the mitzvah, which is do the word biyah, which means that it says when you're coming into the land of Israel. V'she'ena tluya, when it's not tluya ba'aretz, it means it's not written biyah into the land of Israel, but it's tefillin u'peter chamor. It's written there's tefillin and peter chamor. U'dichtiv b'hen that it's written biyah el haaretz, that it is written the concept of going into the land. V'yachye v'yacha el haaretz, when you're coming into the land. V'noagin ben ba'aretz ben chutz haaretz, and it's going to be noheg whether it's in Eretz Yisrael or in chutz haaretz. So you do see that there is a concept of peter chamor or tefillin that even though it does say vayachi v'yacha Hashem el Eskanani, right? It's still noheg, yeah. So he comes and he says like this. So he says, Amar Rav Yehuda. This says Rav Yehuda. Hachi kamer. This is what it means to say. Kol mitzvah shehi chovat aguf. Yeah, he comes and he says like this. Any mitzvah which is chovat aguf, right, which means that it's going to be on the body, right, of the human being, and it has nothing to do with karka, right, the land or gidulea. Noheget ben ba'aretz v'chutz haaretz is going to apply whether it's in Eretz Yisrael or whether it's going to be in chutz haaretz. Chovat karka, but when we're talking about chovat karka, is only going to be in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because anything to do with the land, it's only the land of Israel. But if there's nothing to do with the land and it's on the body, meaning it's on you, the individual, so obviously you're going to be chayav. How do we know these words? It says in a pasuk. This is a pasuk in Devarim, where it says, in Sefer Devarim, where it says, Ele achukim asher natan Hashem lecha l'isha kol yemei shel chayim al adma. Ele achukim, elu hamidrashot. These are the midrashim. A midrash is not mefurash in the Torah, right? It's the midrashim, right? It's a midrash. The mishpatim, these are the dinim. The dinim are mefurash, written in the Torah. So mishpat is something which is written mefurash in the Torah. The midrash is the midrash. You know, like you have midrash Tanchuma, midrash Rabbah, right? Sifri, like all the, you have midrashim. Asheti shmerun, you're going to keep, is a mishnah. La'asot is a maaseh, which, right, is a maaseh, which means the doing of the mitzvot. Ba'aretz. What is ba'aretz now? Yachol, I would have thought to say, kol mitzvah kula lo yinu. I would have thought to say, you know what? You only have a mitzvah to do all the mitzvot in Eretz Yisrael. Meaning Torah only exists in Israel. Tamunumar comes teach you kol hayamim ata asher atem chayim al adama. As whether you're going to be in Eretz Yisrael or chutz haaretz, it always applies, right? Kol hayamim. So what is kol hayamim? Yachol yu noagim ben ba'aretz v'chutz haaretz. Tamunumar ba'aretz, right? When it comes and teach you now ba'aretz, and it's only going to be ba'aretz. Achar sheriba katuv miyet, right? So he comes and he says, right? Now that he comes and he says that now it's after the pasuk already came, and it included and excluded. Right? Achar sheriba katuv miyet, and then it minimized. Right? Tse ulmad, let's come and see. Mima shamur ba'inyan, from that which is written in the topic. Abeta bedun kol hamekomot asher avdu sham hagoyim. Right? You're going to come and you're going to destroy. Right? Abeta bedun kol hamekomot, all the places asher avdu sham hagoyim. Ma avodat kochavim miyuchedet shehi chovat haguf. Avodat kochavim is on the guf. It has nothing to do with the land. Avodah zarah is anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. So he comes and he says, "V'noheg b'maretz v'chutz haaretz," and it's going to be noheg, right? It's the same thing. So too, any chova, any mitzvah, which is chovat haguf, ben noheg b'maretz v'chutz haaretz, has nothing to do with the land. Has to do with that you're going to be noheg everywhere. Why? Because it's going to be chovat haguf. Anything which is on the goof is going to be anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter. Fine. Now that we just mentioned that any mitzvah which is chovat haguf is going to be everywhere in the world, it has nothing to do with the land. But if it's going to be a land mitzvah, so it's only going to be in the land of Israel. So now we're going to speak about a few exceptions to the rules. One of the exceptions to the rules was going to be orla, right? Orla was the first 3 years that a fruit, that a tree, right, grows its fruit. So you have the first 3 years and you're not allowed to benefit from it. Kilaim is a mixtures of the different types of species. You're not allowed to mix the different types of fruits together when you're going to be planting. And the last one is going to be, Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says also, chadash. So we're going to ask the following question. Rabbi Eliezer lekula palig or lechumra palig? Remember that Rabbi Eliezer comes and he's arguing on the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says also the chadash. Is he coming to argue on the Tanakama? Meaning he's going lekula, or is he going lechumra? Right? Why? Because the pashtut of the Mishnah, I would say that the Tanakama is saying the mitzvah chadash is not yotze min haklal, that we said, and therefore it's not noheg in chutz haaretz, and therefore Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says no, it's also going to be in chutz haaretz. So means he's going lechumra, right? But maybe Be'emet Rabbi Eliezer is going the exact opposite. That he's coming to say, right, that they were going to be noheg chadash also in Bavel, just like Tanakama, right? Why? Because even though the halacha usually is not like Rabbi Eliezer, so he comes and he says, right, but in order to come and say that the stam mishnah nola is the chadash asur min haTorah b'chol makom, that's going to be like Tanakama, right? So therefore it comes out that it could be according to everybody. So, or are we going now, right, lekula? So the Gemara is going to explain. Let's try to understand this. So the Gemara says like this: lechumra palig. What does it mean when it says lechumra? Vehachi kama Tanakama. This is what the Tanakama says. Chutz min haola u'min hakilaim, right? Except for ola and kilaim, the hilchat admina la that it's halacha l'Moshe miSinai, that apagav diikal lemem chovat karka, that even though it is chovat karka, right? Still what? It's what's it called? Even though it's right that we could say that it has to do about it, and therefore it's going to be only in Eretz Yisrael, it's also going to be in chutz haaretz. Aval chadash, but chadash ba'aretz in, it's only going to be in Eretz Yisrael. Chutz haaretz, no. My time, what's the reasoning? Because it says in the pasuk, bechol moshevotechem. A moshav that was written in the Torah is la'achar yerusha v'shiva mashma. As after you had an inheritance in the land and you dwelled in the land. So that's only going to be in Eretz Yisrael. So it comes out that the mitzvah of chadash is like any other mitzvah which is tuya ba'aretz, right? Which is only going to be in Eretz Yisrael. And then Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says, even chadash noheg ben ba'aretz ben chutz haaretz. It's going to be noheg whether it's in Eretz Yisrael or whether it's going to be in chutz haaretz. My time on what's the reasoning? Moshav bechol makom she'atem yoshvim. When it says moshav, it means any place where you're living. It's not that v'yarashta and then moshav. No. It's mamash. Moshav means wherever you're living. So wherever you're living, it dwells. So this is the pshat that Rabbi Eliezer is going lechumra. One more time. Tanakama was coming and saying orla and kilaim also apply outside of Israel. Comes Rabbi Eliezer lechumra and says not only orla and kilaim, also chadash or dilma, or maybe let's go the other way around. Let's flip the coin. Lekula pali. We're going lekula. What does that mean? Hachi kama Tanakama. This is what the Tanakama is saying. Chutz me'ola ve'kilaim dilchat ha'gemina, except for ola and kilaim that it's halacha Moshe miSinai, that it also applies in chutz haaretz. Ve'kol sheken chadash, and all the more so, right? The chadash that it also applies in chutz haaretz. Te moshav kol makom she'atem yoshvim mashma, because moshav is mashma, any place where you're living. Ta'ata Rabbi Eliezer lemir, and then Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says chadash and noheg le'baretz. No, chadash is only in Eretz Yisrael. Because when he says Rabbi Eliezer Omer Afa Chadash, what does it mean Afa Chadash? Afa Chadash that it's also in Chutz Haaretz, or Afa Chadash that it's not like Chutz Haaretz, but rather it's like Israel. So he says Chadash eno legabel haaretz moshav le'achar yishav yishem mashma. Umay Af akamaita. Af is also, but it's not going on the last thing that you just said. It's on the first thing that you said, right? That it's only in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, this is the way of learning that Rabbi Eliezer is going lekula. So he says over here like this. Tashema, we're going to try to bring the proof. Ta'amar Abaye comes and he says, Man Tana de Pali Galeh de Rabbi Eliezer. Who's the Tana which argues on Rabbi Eliezer? Rabbi Shmuel. It's Rabbi Shmuel. The Tanya was we learned in a Braita lelamedcha, this comes to teach you, shekol makom shenemar bo moshav, any place where it's going to be written the word moshav, eno ela leachar Yerusha v'yeshiva. It's only going to be after Yerusha and Yeshiva. Right? Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. These are the words of Rabbi Shmuel. So Amalo Rabbi Akiva says Rabbi Akiva, Hare Shabbat shenemar bo moshavot. It's written by Shabbat also moshavot. So that means what? You're going to tell me that Shabbat is only in Eretz Yisrael? And we know that Shabbat is all over the world. Right? Ben ba'aretz, ben chutz haaretz. Amalo, he comes and he says Shabbat, you learn it from a kal v'chomer. Ma mitzvot kalot anoagot ben ba'aretz ben chutz haaretz. Right? He comes and he says all the other mitzvot. There's a lot of mitzvot which are mitzvot kalot. They're light. What do you mean? Yachas to Shabbat. Shabbat is death penalty. It's a kilah. One of the most strictest. One of the 10 commandments. One of the most strictest of the mitzvot. So if you're going to tell me that there's mitzvot kalot, and those mitzvot kalot apply in chutz haaretz, Shabbat Chamidah lo kol sheken it apply in chutz haaretz. So if we don't learn from the moshevotam, even though you could, because you have a kal v'chomer, and the kal v'chomer is going to tell you, no, that really be'emet Shabbat also applies to everybody. Right? It applies to everybody, whether you're going to be in Eretz Yisrael or going to be also in chutz haaretz. Okay? So says the Gemara, Midamar Abaye, from the fact that Abaye comes and he says, Man Tana de Palik Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shmuel, who's the Tana that argues on Rabbi Eliezer? It's going to be Rabbi Shmuel. Shema Mina Rabbi Eliezer lechumra Palik. So it's mashma that Rabbi Eliezer is going lechumra, and he's arguing in the Tanakama lechumra, because according to Abaye, the Tanakama of our Mishnah, which is Rabbi Shmuel, is holding the Moshav is lachad Yerusha v'yeshiva, right? Which is like the first way that we explain the machloket. So therefore, according to this De'ah, Chadash is only after the Yerusha v'yeshiva, which means Chadash does not apply in chutz haaretz. So Rabbi Eliezer was going lechumra then. Shema Mina. That's what we're actually saying. The really bad man, Rabbi Eliezer is actually Machamin, and he's saying Chadash applies also in chutz haaretz. Okay? So Michti, let us see. Rabbi Yishmael HaHechakai. On which case is Rabbi Yishmael going? And Nesachim. We're talking about the concept of Nesachim, wine libations. The Nesachim, right? By Nesachim, Lamezayin Mubet, Bia Moshav Ketiv Behu. It's written Bia and Moshav, meaning it's written both things. Ki tavou el eretz moshavotechem. So you have Bia, you have when you're coming in, and you have Moshav, right? Which is moshavotechem. So therefore the question is, how are you going to come now tell me that anytime that it's written Moshav, even though it's not written Bia, maybe it's only if it's written Bia and Moshav, meaning it has to be written both things. When you're coming into the land of Israel, plus you're dwelling in it. So answers the Gemara, this is what it means to teach you the Kavanah of Rabbi Yishmael. L'lamedcha shekol makom shene'emar Bia u'moshav, any place where it's going to be written Bia and Moshav, eno ela leachad Yerusha v'yeshiva. It's only going to be after Yerusha and Yeshiva. These are the words of Rabbi Yishmael. So therefore, that's what he's coming to tell you, that any time that it is written both Bia and Moshav, so that's only after Yerusha v'yeshiva. These are the words of Yishmael. But if it's not written both things, right, we do not actually come and we do not sin. That's the pshat of kol makom, because also by the mitzvah of chadash, you also have both things. You say v'kitavo la'aretz, right? So it's also written both things, Bia and Moshav, Yeshuv. So therefore, because of that, it's a completely different, right, halacha. So says the Gemara, right, if so, Amalo Rabbi Akiva comes and he says, Hare Shabbat ne'emar bo moshavot, ve'amalo Shabbat kal v'chomer. He says, 1 second, but Shabbat it also said Moshav. And we said that the Shabbat was a kal v'chomer. Elmaleh, why don't I just say, Anna Bia Moshav kamina? I was only talking about Bia and Moshav, that is only going to be in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, right, Mitzvah Shabbat was not talking Bia. So since it's not written Bia by Shabbat, so that's why it's going to be Noeg in chutz haaretz. Meaning, according to what you just said, that it's only when it says Bia and Moshav, right, then it applies in Israel. But if it doesn't say that it doesn't apply in Israel, so he says, 1 second. So then by Shabbat, it doesn't say Bia. It only says Moshav. So obviously it applies in chutz haaretz. Why do I need a kal v'chomer? It doesn't make sense. So he comes and he says, Chada ve'od ka'amar le. He comes and he says there's two different reasons. Number one, the Ana Bia Moshav coming. And number one, he's saying that you need both, Bia and Moshav. Ve'od, and furthermore, the Ka'amarta, when you said Hare Shabbat shene'emar bo Moshavot, when it says Shabbat, that it does say Moshavot, Shabbat kal v'chomer. Shabbat is a kal v'chomer. So even without the kal v'chomer, right, that means that even without the Bia and Moshav, you have another reason to do it. Even without the Bia and Moshav, it's kal v'chomer. So you've got two reasons for Shabbat to be mechayev bechol ha'olam, not only just in Eretz Yisrael, which that actually makes sense. So says the Gemara, what is the machloket then between Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva? Why is it that Rabbi Akiva is arguing with Rabbi Ishmael and he says that even if it's going to be biyah umoshav, according to Rabbi Ishmael? So he says, they're arguing, would a yachid bring nesachim in the midbar or not? Meaning we found nesachim are wine libations. Meaning when you, yes, it's wine libations. Right? There is niske mayim nesachim, but that's only on Sukkot, as we learned in Masechet Tanit in Kiyam Masechta. Right? Which means that we learn by Imam Atzinu in the Torah, right, that they did bring in the desert, right, to do with nesachim with korbanot tzibur, for example, latamid, or things like that. The question is, a yachid, would he also bring nesachim or not? So that was the machloke between Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Ishmael Savar lo kirvu nesachim amibar. They would not bring nesachim in the desert, and therefore, when it says ki tavohu el eretz moshavotechem, when you're going to come to the land of eretz moshavotechem, we're going to say that the isur, the chiyuv, right, to bring nesachim, right, by all these things. According to him, you're saying that moshavotechem is any place where you're living, and therefore he's explaining that it's after Yerusha v'Yeshiva, that only after they came and they conquered all of Israel, so then that's when they were able to do it on the Yechidim, right, but not by the Bamat Tzibur. But according to Rabbi Akiva, he held kirvu nesachim b'midbar. They did bring the nesachim b'midbar, okay, which means that they are obligated to come and to bring, right, the nesachim with the korbanot, and therefore when the Torah came and said, right, the entire concept of bringing the korbanot, tzibur, and everything, it comes and it says you cannot say ki tavo eretz moshavotechem, that is coming only after you go into the land of Israel, because they were still bringing it. So if they were still bringing the nesachim even beforehand, so for obviously that's not the pshat then. So therefore the kavanah moshavotechem is any place where you're living, and therefore since it's every place where you're living, that's why he comes and he says that's a machloke between Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva in the pshat of moshavotechem. Does moshavotechem mean any place where you're living, or does it mean no, only after you are yoresh and you're dwelling right in this place? Amar Abaye. Abaye comes and he says as follows: Hi Tanad Rabbi Ishmael. This Tanad Rabbi Ishmael mapik meidach Tanad Rabbi Ishmael. Yeah, he's coming and taking out of the words of the Rabbi Ishmael, the Tanad Rabbi Ishmael, because they taught in the Tanad Rabbi Ishmael hol v'neemru biot b'Torah stam. Since it also just says biyah in the Torah stam, upara lecha ketub bechamen, and the Torah said lachar yeshiva v'yeshiva, which means after Yerusha yeshiva, when it says ki tavo la'aretz Shalom tamid ishta yashavta bah, by parashat Shofetim, when it says som tasim alecha melech afkol le'achar Yerusha v'yeshiva. So therefore, we're actually learning that anytime that when it's going to be written, also the concept of the biyah, it's talking about after Yerusha v'yeshiva, meaning sometimes it's just written ki tavo la'aretz. It doesn't say v'yishta, right, Yerusha or v'yashavta. But he says, but since there is one place where it does say it, so therefore we're applying, right? We're coming and we're applying it to everywhere else. V'idach and the other places. He says, no, because the king, right, which is the concept of som tasim alecha melech, and bikurim are also two psukim coming to teach you the exact same thing. You remember we spoke about that every single time that it's going to speak about the exact same thing, so you cannot learn from it. So therefore the same thing, bikurim, and also the king is only after you've already conquered the land, and you're inside and you're dwelling it, you're inheriting it. And the other Tana, he comes and he says, you need Yerusha v'Yeshiva. Because if it was only going to be written, the king, and not written Bikurim, I would have thought to say Bikurim, le'altar. The Bikurim, you're benefiting from immediately. If it was only going to be written Bikurim and not written by the king, Havamina, I would have thought to say only because of the Melech, because therefore, since the king, he always conquers, so it's going to be Lealtar immediately, right? Why? Immediately, you come and you do it. So therefore, if the Torah would have not, right, that's what he's saying, Ilu Katva Torah Yerusha v'Yeshiva, only by the mitzvah Bikurim, I would have thought to say that Bichal is nothing to do with the king, right? And therefore, the Torah had to bring down both things, and therefore, since we need both of them, the Yerusha and the Yeshiva, so therefore, he comes and he says, by these two mitzvot, it's not considered anymore Shnei Ketuvim Ba'im Kechad. One more time. Shnei Ketuvim Ba'im Kechad means two psukim come and teach you the exact same halacha, and I didn't need you to teach the same, right? But once I come and I say that each pasuk was coming to teach you something new, so it's not anymore two psukim Ba'im Kechad. Ve'idach, but the other mandama, Nichtov Rachmana Melech Velo Ba'i Bikurim. All you had to do was write the king, and you didn't have to write down Bikurim. and I'm going to say, just like the king conquers, right? After Yerusha Yeshiva, Bikurim, Cholshken should be the exact same thing. Which means that it is Shnei Ktuvim B'Yom Kechad, because I didn't need to write it. And therefore, since I didn't need to write it, and I could have learned it from Kal V'chomer, and I did write it, it's Shnei Ktuvim B'Yom Kechad, 2 psukim coming to teach you the exact same halacha, and 2 psukim which are going to come to teach you the same halacha, you cannot learn from it. The Yidach and the other one, Ikatav V'Hachi, which is basically the Bet HaMidrash of Rabbi Shmuel. If it would have only written by the king and not by the Bikurim, Hava, I mean, I would have thought to say, Hava Chala. What about the concept of Chala? Hafrashat Chala was immediately when you came into the land of Israel. Right at the end of Parashat Shelach, right after the spies, it brings down the mitzvah of Chala. Right, that you go when you come into the land of Israel, immediately mitzvah Chala. Kamash Malan comes to teach you, right? That's what it's saying. The mitzvah Chala is only after Yerusha Yeshiva, and therefore also since it's written by the Minui Melech and also by Bikurim, again it's not going to be Shnei Ktuvim B'Yom Kechad. Okay, fine. Lamed Zayin Amud Bet towards the bottom. Vehashta da'amarta. Now that you just told me now, Chovat Haguf Noheget. Ben be'eretz Yisrael, ben b'chutz haaretz. Moshav dekatav rachmana ga b'Shabbat. Lama li? So why do I need moshav by Shabbat? Which means like this, right? If right now you're going to tell me right now that Shabbat is chovat haguf, so therefore, why do I need now the chol shotechem? Because if the chol shotechem is going to come and is going to teach you that what that it's going to be in any place where you're living, b'chol makom, I don't need that. Just tell me chovat haguf, right? Right, which is the beginning of what we spoke about, and that's it. And you don't need anything else, right? Because that's it. So why are you writing then Moshav? You're coming and you're writing Moshav. So he comes and he says, Itzrich. You do need the word Moshav. Why do you need the word Moshav? Sal kadaita chamina, right? Because you would have thought to say, Holu binyana de moadot ktiva. Since Shabbat is written by the moadot, tibaye kiddush ki moadot. I would have thought to say that you need kiddush, right? Kiddush betin, just like the moadot. And therefore, if you're going to come and you're going to tell me now, right, that just like you need the entire concept of the kiddush of betin and everything, so therefore he comes to say, right, I would have thought to say that I do need the exact same halacha, okay? So therefore he comes and he says, right, Kamashmanan comes to teach you the Torah, right, that the Torah is actually coming and teaching you that it's bechol moshavotechem, that Shabbat does not need the kiddush betin. Meaning, bechol moshavotechem is not coming to teach you that it applies everywhere. Because technically speaking, I could have learned that it applies everywhere already for the fact that it's going to be chovat haguf, right? And that's it, and I don't need anything else, right? So therefore, so why do I need v'chol moshevotechem then? It says, no, moshevot by Shabbat is teaching you that it's by everywhere and you don't need to sanctify it. You don't need to sanctify the Shabbat to come and to make it like Kiddush HaChodesh in order to make the Chagim and all. No, you don't need that by Shabbat. So says the Gemara, Moshav de katav rachmana ga bechelev, lama li? So why be'emet then do I need Moshav by chelev and dam? Why do I need by there, by chelev and dam? Because it says, right? If also these things have nothing to do with the land, you're not allowed to come and you're not allowed to eat chelev or dam. So therefore, so why does it have to say moshav then? Right? Because if we have a whole bunch of things that has nothing to do with the land, right? So therefore, if we have a whole bunch of things which has nothing to do with the land, so therefore, if it's a chovat haguf, so therefore, you're obviously chayav. So why do you have moshevotechem then? So he comes and he says, "Itzrich, I need it." Why? Sal kadaita chamina. I would have thought to say, "Holu ubinyana de korbanot ktive." I would have thought to say that since these two halachot of chelev and dam are brought down by korbanot, right? Bizman diika korban nitzar chelev and dam. During the time that there is going to be a korban, so there's going to be an isur of chelev and dam. Bizman deleka korban, and during the time that there's not going to be a korban, no, there's no isur by them. Meaning, I would have thought to say, you know what? It's very, very simple. It's only brought down by korbanot. So therefore, when there's korbanot, there's an isur of chelev and dam. If there's no korbanot, there's no isur of chelev and dam. That's what I would have thought. Kamash malan, when it comes to teaching bechol moshevotechem means that it's bechol zman. Meaning it's not, in this place, it's not bechol makom. It's not bechol makom. It has to be bechol zman, right? In any time. Any time frame means tamid. Doesn't matter whether it's korbanot, not korbanot, you always have the isur of chelev v'dam. So says the Gemara, Moshav de katav rachmana ga b'matzav maror lamali. Why do I have the mitzvah, why do I have Moshav written by matzav maror? So basically this, we came and we started the Gemara by coming and speaking about the differences between mitzvot tluyot ba'aretz and mitzvot which are chovat haguf. After that, we went on a tangent and we put that aside. And then we came and we started asking, 1 second, you have Shabbat where it's written Moshav, so therefore Moshav is mashma anywhere where you're living. So then, and then we said, no, Shabbat Sakal V'chomer. Then we came and we brought down also the concept of Nesachim. And then we came with, so 1 second, but does have to nothing to do with the land, but it has a 1 second, but it's written all the time, not all the time. So in a machloket, in the desert, did they do it or did they not do it? Does it have to do with the Yerusha or not? And then now that we come down, we 1 second. If you're going to tell me now that there's such a concept of Chovat Aguf, and Chovat Aguf, we said, Lechu le'alma, you're always chayav. So therefore, why does it say Moshav by all these mitzvot? So Shabbat, we already answered, which means Shabbat means the chidush is you don't need kiddush moedot, right? By the moed, you have to be mekadesh ota. Bet you have to come and say, okay, fine, now there's the new month, and now you come, when is the moed? Shabbat, you never have to do that. By the chelev edam, the Moshav was going to teach you zman. Zman means not Moshav, meaning in the place, because it's always, but it's always. Meaning even if there's no korbanot, you're still going to be chayav everywhere. Now, by matzah umaror, what does it come to teach you? So he says, Itzich, you also need it. Why? I would have thought to say, since it's written, right, that you're going to eat the matzah umaror on the korban pesach, right? So he says, so you're only obligated the mitzvah of matzah and maror only when there's a korban pesach. Nowadays, for example, there's no korban pesach. I would have thought to say, there's no mitzvah, matzah umaror. Kamashmanan comes to teach you again, it's no heget even when there's no korban pesach, just like the other one was also no heg, even though there's no korbanot by the chelev edam. Okay, another question. 1 second. So another question now. Biyah. What about now biyah? Biyah is written by tefillin u'peter chamor. We already know that according to everybody, tefillin u'peter chamor is also chovat aguf. Has nothing to do with a place. So then why does it say the concept of biyah then? It says vayachi v'yacha. Why? What's the connection now between coming to the land of Israel? So he comes and he says, we needed like the Tanur Ishmael, right? Which means, mitzvah zo shebishvilah tikanes haaretz. He says, no, the pshat is you have to do this mitzvah in order to go into the land of Israel. Meaning, you want to go into the land of Israel. It's not that when you go into the land of Israel, you're obligated in tefillin. Tefillin is chovat aguf. You're always obligated in tefillin. Right? That was already in the Parashat Bo, even before we went into the land of Israel. It says, no, the pshat is that if you want to go into the land of Israel, be careful with the mitzvah of tefillin. That's what it means. Right? Right? And let's get an and then you're going to say, right, that you're going to put on the tefillin. It's good according to the Manda Amar Moshav. Kol makom. That what did he say? He says, Kol makom shatem yoshvim mashma. He says, 1 second. We were talking about that the word Moshav means anywhere where you're living. Moshav is even nowadays. What do you call Moshav? A place of where you live. So he says, right? What does that mean? That basically you're going to come and you're going to eat from the Fuah Chadasha in Eretz Yisrael only after Pesach, which is after the 16th of Nisan. But you're not allowed to eat it beforehand. And that's the laws of Yashan and Chadash, even until today. Even until today, right? After the day after Pesach, what are you allowed to eat? You're allowed to eat Chadash again. Why? Because everything becomes Yashan. So for example, right now they're going to start growing things. And then it grows and it's chadash, so you're not allowed to eat it, right? And according to what we're going to learn in the halacha, right, that we're going to paskin like Rabbi, that means that chadash even in chutz la'aretz is doraita, which means that it's also going to be noheg. So you've got a problem. Now, if you got a problem, all of a sudden comes the day after Pesach, and now all of a sudden you're allowed to eat it. Almas, you see from here, right? Lamidchet amud aleph on top. Akruv Omer v'hadarachul. You bring the Korban Omer. The Korban Omer is brought on the second day of Pesach, Sfirat Omer, right? It's the Korban Omer. V'hadarachul, and then you're going to come and you're going to eat the Chadash. So Ela lemanda amar lachal yushav yishav. If you're going to tell me now that the entire concept of Chadash, right, is not going to be Chal only after the 14 years that they went into Israel, after they came and they conquered and they conquered in quests, right, of the land of Israel. So why don't they eat it immediately then? So answers the Gemara, lo v'tzriche. They didn't need to. Why? He says, because it says in the pasuk, Uvnei Yisrael achlu et haman 40 shana bo haman eretz Moshavet. Bnei Yisrael, they ate the man for 40 years, right, in Eretz Yisrael. Et haman achlu bo haman eretz Yisrael, and they went there until they got to the end of the Yarden. So Chachamim come and they say, Iev shalomar, you cannot come and say ad bo haman eretz Moshavet until they passed the Yarden and went into Israel. Shekvar ne'emar, but the Lord already says el kitzer it's Canaan, only on the border of Israel. The Iev shalomar, you can't say el kitzer it's Canaan. Shekvar ne'emar ad bo haman eretz Moshavet. So how do you do that then? How do you do that ki'ilu that it's until you get into the land of Israel, but until the outskirts of Israel? So how do you explain that? Is it until they got into Israel, until the outskirts? So he said, no. The Shiva Ba'adar met Moshe On the 7th of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, and the man stopped. But they still had man that was leftovers in the kelim until the 16th of Nisan.
For over a month.
Right? And therefore he comes and he says, Sofa Pasuk, right? That's what he says over here. So the end of the Pasuk, which they actually come and they're making a hefsek, right? That means basically they're stopping to eat the man in the Arvot Moav. It's talking about when it's stopping, right? The beginning of the Pasuk, right? They're saying that if Siku to eat it in Eretz Yisrael, is talking about the man which was left over in the kelim. Because they came and then they came, right? You didn't collect it, right? So he comes and he says that we actually ate it for another 39 days until the 16th of Nisan. And therefore, according to Shitat of Yishmael, he says Moshav means after Yerusha Shiva, so Yisrael were fitting to come and to eat the Teruah Chadashah even before the 16th of Nisan. So therefore, right, what? So they didn't need it. But they didn't need. Why didn't they need? Because they were eating the leftovers of the man in their, right, in their keli.